The whisper in the dark. The old space station drifted above a dying planet. Its lights were dim, its corridors cold and empty. Only the sound of engines and distant metal creaks filled the air. Captain Reed walked slowly through the passage, his flashlight cutting through layers of dust. He had been ordered to inspect the forgotten section called Base 7. No one had entered it in years. Rumors said Base 7 once held alien prisoners from the Zyra War. But after the peace treaty, the area was supposed to be sealed forever. Still, the command sent him, alone, to check the systems. It was supposed to be a routine check. As he reached the door, he heard a sound. Soft, broken, like a voice carried through metal. He stopped, his heartbeat rising. He waited, silence. Then again, that voice, barely audible. Please untie it. Reed frowned. No one should be here. He pointed his flashlight toward the sound. The beam trembled slightly in his hand. The air smelled of rust and chemicals. He followed the echo until he reached a small cell at the corner of the bay. Inside, he saw movement. Someone, chained to the wall. The figure was thin, wrapped in torn cloth. Her skin faintly glowed blue under the beam. Reed froze. It was a Zyra, one of the alien race humanity had nearly destroyed. Her eyes were half closed, her lips dry. But when she spoke again, her voice was gentle. Please, that hurts. Every part of his training told him to step back, to report immediately. Humans were forbidden to interact with any surviving Zyra. The Federation's law was strict. Contact meant treason. Yet something in her voice held more humanity than the cold laws he served. Reed slowly stepped closer. Her wrists were bound by glowing steel cuffs. Dried blood had turned dark around the edges. He looked at the control panel beside the wall. It still had power. Who put you here? He asked quietly. Her eyes opened, reflecting his light. They said I carried secrets, she whispered. But I only carried life. Reed didn't understand. But the way she said life made him uneasy. He noticed a small metallic scar near her chest, like a sealed wound. Maybe she had been experimented on. He felt anger rising in his chest. The Federation claimed it fought for justice. But what kind of justice left someone chained and bleeding in the dark? He took a deep breath. You are not supposed to be here, he said. I was never supposed to exist, she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. That sentence broke something inside him. Reed turned to the control panel. He hesitated for only a moment. He knew that if he released her, his career, his freedom, maybe even his life would be over. But he could not walk away. Not after hearing that voice, not after seeing those wounds. He pressed the release command. With a sharp hiss, the cuffs opened. The alien collapsed forward, her knees hitting the ground. Reed rushed to catch her before she fell. Her skin felt cold, almost electric. Easy, he said softly. You're free now. She looked up at him, confused. You shouldn't have done that, she said. They will come. Reed frowned. Who will come? Before she could answer, a loud alarm blared across the bay. Red lights began to flash, warning sirens screaming through the empty halls. Security systems had detected an unauthorized release. Reed cursed under his breath. He pulled her arm gently. We have to move. Her legs were weak, but she followed. Each step echoed as they ran down the corridor. Reed's earpiece buzzed with messages from command. Captain Reed, report. What's going on in Base 7? He tore the device from his ear and threw it aside. They reached the old transport lift. It trembled as it started moving. The alien looked at him with fear. Why? She asked. Why would a human help me? Reed didn't know how to answer. Maybe it was guilt, maybe compassion, or maybe just the voice that wouldn't stop echoing in his head. As the lift doors opened, they saw the security drones descending from above. The station's automated defense was already hunting them. Reed pulled out his sidearm, aiming at the drones. The alien raised her hand weakly, and the air around them shimmered. A pulse of blue light shot outward, knocking the machines down like falling stars. Reed stared in shock. What was that? Her voice trembled. A gift. I was created to protect, not to fight. For a second, the chaos paused. The alarms, the lights, the danger, all seemed distant. Reed realized this was bigger than a rescue. He had just freed something the Federation wanted hidden forever. And deep down, he knew there was no turning back now. He looked at her again. Then let's protect each other, he said. She nodded faintly, her glowing eyes soft but determined. Together they stepped into the storm of red lights and sirens. Behind them, the cell door closed for the last time. Ahead of them, destiny waited in the dark. The chase through the void. The lift shook as it descended, red alarms flashing through the glass walls. Captain Reed held the alien close, trying to keep her steady. She was weak, breathing fast, the strange blue veins beneath her skin glowing brighter with every passing second. He didn't understand what was happening to her, but he knew one thing. They had to escape before the station sealed down. As soon as the doors opened, the echo of footsteps thundered down the corridor. Federation soldiers were already searching, their armored boots striking the metal floor like hammers. Reed pulled her behind an energy console, whispering, "Stay quiet, don't move." She nodded, her wide eyes reflecting the red light. The soldiers passed, voices muffled behind helmets. Containment breach confirmed. Captain Reed is off comm. Suspect treason. Reed clenched his jaw, hearing his own name like a sentence. When the hallway cleared, he led her through maintenance tunnels, narrow and dark. The air smelled of oil and burnt circuits. She stumbled often, but never complained. Every time she fell, he caught her. Every time he looked into her eyes, he saw both pain and something deeper, trust. After nearly an hour, they reached the docking bay. It was empty, rows of small transport pods lined up like silver eggs. Reed started one, bypassing security codes with his command chip. The engines hummed softly. He turned to her. "Can you handle space pressure?" She looked confused for a moment, then smiled weakly. "I was born in the stars, human." He smiled back, the first real smile in years. The pod launched out of the station like a bullet. Behind them, Station Orion glowed red against the endless black. Reed could see patrol ships turning toward them, scanning beams slicing through space. "We've got company," he muttered. The alien placed her hand on the pod's console. A soft blue pulse spread through the metal like ripples in water. Suddenly, the radar blinked out. The ship vanished from enemy sensors. Reed stared in disbelief. "What did you do?" "Just a little silence," she said, her voice almost playful now. For a moment, there was peace. The stars stretched endlessly around them. She leaned back, breathing slowly. Her wounds were closing, the glowing lines on her skin forming strange patterns that looked almost like constellations. Reed watched, amazed. "You're healing." "It's temporary," she said. "The chains burned deep. They were meant to stop what I am." "What are you?" he asked softly. She looked out the window, eyes reflecting the void. "Not a weapon, though they tried to make me one." He didn't press her. He knew there would be time, if they survived. But then the pod shook violently. An impact alert screamed. Federation interceptors had found them again, their weapons locking on. Reed cursed, taking the controls. "Hold on," he said, steering into a debris field of shattered satellites. Explosions flashed outside, chunks of metal spinning past like knives. He flew low between the wreckage, his hands moving fast. But a plasma beam hit the tail. The pod spun, alarms flaring. The alien's voice cut through the chaos. "Trust me," she said, and before Reed could respond, she reached toward him. Her hand touched his chest. The world flashed white. He felt the air vibrate, the sound of his own heart slowing. And suddenly, silence. The pod was gone. They were floating in space, but not dying. Around them shimmered a faint sphere of blue light. Her energy. Reed stared in awe. She was holding the both of them alive in open vacuum. Stars glimmered around like frozen sparks. Her body trembled, sweat beading on her forehead. "This is what they feared," she whispered. "The power to make life survive anywhere." He wanted to speak, but the sight left him breathless. Below them, the destroyed pod drifted away like a memory. He reached for her hand. "You're going to burn out," he said. Her eyes softened. Better to burn saving someone than to fade in chains. In that moment, Reed realized she was more human than most of the people he had ever served with. He pulled her closer as her strength faltered. The blue light began to flicker. Then, a bright flash appeared ahead. A large freighter ship emerging from hyperspace. Reed recognized it. The Odyssey, an old cargo hauler run by smugglers he once knew. He waved his arm, signaling distress. The ship slowed, scanning them. A voice came through a faint comm channel. "This is Captain Vega of the Odyssey. What the hell are you doing floating out here?" Reed smiled faintly. Long story, Vega, he said, but I could really use a lift. The freighter's bay doors opened, light flooding the darkness. As they drifted closer, the alien looked up at him, her voice trembling. Thank you, human, she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently. Don't thank me yet, he said. They'll never stop hunting us now. As they entered the ship, the blue light around them faded. Her eyes closed, exhaustion finally taking her. Reed carried her through the airlock, his heart heavy but determined. The Federation would call him a traitor, but deep down, he knew he had done the right thing. Because somewhere inside that fragile alien girl, there was something sacred, something worth breaking every law for. The secrets of the Odyssey. The old freighter Odyssey floated like a ghost through the emptiness of space. Inside its metal halls, everything smelled of oil, dust, and old circuits. Captain Vega, a broad-shouldered man with a cybernetic eye, led Reed and the alien through the corridor. What in all the stars have you dragged aboard this time, Reed? He muttered, half amused, half angry. Reed just looked tired, his uniform torn, his face pale. She needed help, he said simply, and I couldn't leave her there. Vega stopped, studying the girl. Her skin still glowed faintly, like moonlight underwater. She was silent, her head resting weakly against Reed's shoulder. Vega sighed, shaking his head. You always had a death wish, he said. Fine, we'll hide her for now, but if the Federation tracks her signal, we're all dead. Reed nodded. I'll take responsibility, he said, his voice calm but heavy. They placed her in the med bay. The room hummed with weak power, old machines flickering to life. Reed cleaned her wounds carefully, his hands trembling slightly. When he tried to scan her vitals, the screen filled with static. Her body emitted some kind of interference. The ship's medic frowned. She's not like anything I've seen, he murmured. Her cells are changing themselves, adapting, rewriting. Reed looked down at her. Like evolution on fast forward, he whispered. Hours passed. Reed sat beside her bed, the ship rumbling softly as it drifted through silent space. He hadn't slept in 2 days, his mind trapped between guilt and awe. He thought about the Federation, about all the rules he had broken. He had spent years believing in their justice, their order. But now, he wasn't sure what any of it meant. The alien stirred slightly. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment, she just looked at him, silent. Then she whispered, Where are we? Safe, Reed said softly, for now. She tried to sit up, her body weak. He helped her gently. She looked around, her gaze filled with both fear and wonder. You risked everything, she said quietly. Why? Reed hesitated. I couldn't watch someone suffer just because a law said I should. Her lips curved into a faint smile. You are strange for a soldier, she said. He laughed under his breath. Maybe that's why I'm still alive. She turned to the window, looking at the sea of stars outside. They'll come for me, she whispered. They always do. Reed frowned. Why you? He asked. What are you hiding from them? For a long time, she said nothing. Then, in a soft, trembling voice, she spoke. They created me. Reed froze. Created? Yes, she said, her eyes reflecting light like liquid glass. The Federation called it Project Seraph. She took a deep breath, her hands shaking. I was not born. I was built. Made to survive anything. To carry the DNA of both human and Zyra. Reed stared at her in silence. The truth hit him like cold fire. She's hybrid, Vega muttered from the doorway, his voice low. The Federation experimented after the war, didn't they? The alien nodded slowly. They wanted a bridge between species, but when I started showing powers they couldn't control, they called me a threat. Reed clenched his fists, anger burning behind his calm face. They chained you, tortured you, just because you were different. She nodded, eyes glistening. I didn't want to fight, she whispered. I only wanted to live. For a moment, no one spoke. The hum of the ship filled the silence like a heartbeat. Reed finally said, Then you'll live, I promise. Her eyes widened slightly, searching his face. Even if it costs you everything? He smiled faintly. It already has. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. Vega cursed, running to the control deck. Federation patrols just dropped out of hyperspace. They're scanning the sector. Reed's heart pounded. They found us, he said. The alien stood up weakly, her glow flickering like a fading flame. No, she whispered. They found me. She moved to the center of the med bay, closing her eyes. A low hum filled the air, the walls vibrating. Blue energy began to rise from her skin, swirling like a storm. Reed stepped closer. What are you doing? Her voice echoed softly. Protecting the only ones who ever treated me as alive. The light burst outward, a silent wave rippling across space. Outside, every Federation scanner in range went blind. The ships halted, their systems crashing. Inside the Odyssey, panels flickered, lights dimming. Then, silence again. Reed caught her as she collapsed, her body trembling from the effort. He laid her back on the bed, her breathing shallow. You just saved us, he whispered. She smiled faintly, eyes half closed. Not yet, she murmured. They'll send more. Reed looked out the viewport, watching distant flashes in the dark. He knew she was right, but he also knew something else. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was the beginning of a rebellion. And whether he wanted it or not, he had already chosen his side. The price of freedom. The Odyssey drifted through a nebula of golden dust, its engines running silent. The storm outside painted the ship in waves of orange light, hiding it from scanners. Inside, everything was quiet, too quiet. Reed stood near the viewing deck, staring into the glowing clouds. He hadn't slept in 3 days, not since the Federation marked him a traitor. Behind him, the door slid open. The alien, the one he now knew as Lyra, stepped softly into the room. Her steps were light, almost soundless, her glow dimmed to avoid detection. You should rest, she said gently. Reed smiled faintly, shaking his head. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see their ships, hunting us. She stood beside him, watching the stars drift beyond the nebulous haze. They fear what they cannot control, she whispered. It is the same everywhere. Reed looked at her. You could have left me behind, back on that station, he said. Lyra tilted her head. You untied me, she replied softly. I only followed the one who believed I was more than a weapon. Her words hit deeper than she knew. Reed turned back to the stars, hiding the guilt in his chest. He remembered the screams of the Zyra War, the propaganda that painted her kind as monsters. He had believed all of it once. Now, standing beside her, he realized how blind humanity had been. The silence was broken by Vega's voice echoing through the intercom. Reed, we've got movement. 3 ships entering the nebula edge, Federation tags confirmed. Reed's heart sank. They found us again, he said. Lyra's eyes flickered. They always find me, she whispered, because of the mark they left. She raised her hand, and for a brief moment, a symbol shimmered under her skin, a faint red spiral glowing near her collarbone. It's a beacon, she said quietly. They can track my pulse anywhere in the system. Reed's fists tightened. They branded you like property. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. They said I belonged to the Federation, that freedom was not for something created in a lab. Reed turned to her, his voice low but firm. Not anymore, he said. We'll remove it. Lyra looked up in shock. It's part of me, you can't. He stepped closer, determination in his eyes. I'll find a way. The ship rocked as a blast hit the outer hull. Vega shouted over comms. They're firing ion rounds. Shields are failing. Reed grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward engineering. The crew ran around them, alarms blaring, the air thick with smoke. Lyra stopped suddenly, her eyes glowing brighter. Go, she said. I can hold them off. Reed turned sharply. No, you're not sacrificing yourself again. This time, I'm not dying, she said. I'm learning. Before he could respond, she stepped forward, pressing her palm against the metal wall. The ship itself began to hum, the lights flickering in sync with her heartbeat. Blue energy flowed through the circuits like veins of light. Vega's voice broke through the noise. What the? Engines just jumped to full power on their own. Reed shouted. She's linking with the ship. Let her work. Outside, the nebula flared. The Odyssey burst forward at impossible speed. The Federation ships followed, but their systems started to fail one by one. Lyra's energy rippled through the cloud, confusing sensors, bending signals. Reed watched as she trembled, sweat forming on her brow. Her power was vast, but dangerous. The air smelled of ozone and heat. Finally, the stars stretched into streaks of light. Hyperspace. The chase was over, for now. Lyra collapsed to her knees, the glow fading. Reed caught her before she fell. Her skin was burning hot, her breathing shallow. "You did it," he said. "You saved us." She looked up weakly, eyes flickering. "I used too much," she whispered. "The beacon's gone, but I can't feel my pulse." Her hand slipped from his grasp. Reed's heart froze. He shouted for the medic. The crew rushed in, working quickly, but the monitors only showed fading signals. Vega looked grim. "She burned herself out, Reed," he said softly. Reed gritted his teeth. "No, she's not gone. She said she was built to survive anything." He pressed his forehead against her hand. "Come on, Lyra," he whispered. "Don't leave now." Then, faintly, he felt a spark, a tiny pulse under her skin. The glow returned, faint but steady. Her body was adapting again, rebuilding itself cell by cell. Reed exhaled in disbelief. "She's fighting," he murmured. "She's really fighting." Hours later, as the ship floated safely beyond the nebula, Reed stood watch over her. Her breathing steady now, her expression peaceful. Vega entered quietly, holding a datapad. "You need to see this," he said, handing it over. The pad showed encrypted transmissions intercepted from the Federation. A name repeated across every message, Project Seraph. And under it, a directive stamped in red. "Recover the specimen or destroy all witnesses." Reed's blood ran cold. He looked at Lyra sleeping, her face calm and innocent. They wouldn't stop, not ever. He turned to Vega. "Then we'll make them regret ever creating her." Vega raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about war." Reed nodded slowly, his eyes hard as steel. "No," he said. "I'm talking about justice. The shadow of the Seraphs." The Odyssey drifted near a dead moon, hidden in its dark orbit. The ship's lights were dimmed, engines silent, shields tuned to look like cold rock. Reed stood over the holographic table, the intercepted files floating before him like ghosts of forbidden knowledge. Lines of red text scrolled across the display, Federation Black projects, genetic logs, human and alien codes fused together. Every file led to one name, Project Seraph. Vega leaned against the wall, chewing on a ration stick, his one cybernetic eye glowing faintly. "You sure you want to keep digging into this?" he asked. "The deeper we go, the harder it'll be to crawl back." Reed didn't answer, his eyes locked on the hologram. Each document was worse than the last. Experiments on captured Zyra, forced hybridization, memory wipes, cloning trials, all buried beneath fake humanitarian programs. Finally, he found it. Lyra's file. Subject, Seraph 01. Status, terminated. Reed's jaw tightened. "They declared her dead," he muttered, "and kept experimenting anyway." Vega crossed his arms. "Looks like she wasn't the only one." Reed turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Vega tapped the console, opening another file. Dozens of designations appeared. Seraph 02, Seraph 03, Seraph 04. Some were marked failed, others missing. Reed's chest tightened. "They made more," he whispered. "And if the others survived," Vega said, "they could be anywhere." Before Reed could respond, the medbay door slid open behind them. Lyra stood there, pale but awake, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, calm but sad. "I heard you," she said softly. "They made others like me." Reed hesitated. "Yes," he said, "but we'll find them, we'll free them." She walked closer, her expression distant. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They weren't made to live, they were made to replace." Reed frowned. "Replace what?" "Us," she said. "Humans, Zyra, everything. The Federation wanted a perfect species, loyal, powerful, without emotion." The room fell silent. Vega muttered under his breath. "So they planned to erase both sides of the war." Lyra nodded slowly. "They believed if emotion caused conflict, then emotion must be destroyed." Reed's stomach twisted. He remembered every propaganda speech he'd heard, every call for purity and peace through progress. It all made sense now. Peace built on control, not compassion. He looked at her. "You escaped them, Lyra," he said. "You broke the chain." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Not yet," she whispered. "The others are still bound. And if the Federation activates them, no one will survive." Before anyone could speak, the ship's console beeped. Vega leaned over it. "Signal incoming," Encrypted, looks like a distress beacon. Reed frowned. From where? Outer Rim. Uncharted zone. But look at the signature, Vega said, zooming in. Reed's eyes widened. The signal matched Seraph 03. Lyra stepped forward, her pulse quickening. She's alive, she whispered. I can feel her. Reed turned to Vega. Set course, he ordered. Vega shook his head. That's Federation territory. You'll get us all killed. Reed met his gaze coldly. Then we die doing something that matters. Hours later, the Odyssey slipped through the void toward the source of the signal. The closer they got, the colder the air felt. Lyra sat near the viewport, eyes closed, her hands trembling slightly. Reed sat across from her, watching quietly. You can sense her? He asked. She's calling, Lyra whispered. But not for help. It's pain, endless pain. The ship emerged from hyperspace near a broken planet. The surface was blackened, full of twisted structures, half organic, half metal. Vega muttered, That's not natural. Reed looked through the scanner. It's a lab, he said, an old Seraph facility. They landed near the ruins, air thick with static. Reed led the way with a plasma rifle, Vega behind him, Lyra walking silently in the middle. As they entered the complex, the walls pulsed faintly, alive somehow, breathing. Lyra stopped suddenly, whispering, She's here. They turned a corner and froze. In the center of the chamber floated a glass pod, cracked and glowing. Inside lay a figure, another Seraph, taller, sharper features, her skin dark silver, her eyes open but empty. Lyra rushed forward, touching the glass. Seraph 03, she breathed, sister. The pod suddenly hissed, releasing vapor. The figure inside stirred, her eyes lighting with cold blue fire. Reed stepped back, weapon ready. Careful, Lyra, he warned. But Lyra shook her head. She's not your enemy, she whispered. The pod shattered, energy surging through the air. Seraph 03 stepped out slowly, her voice mechanical and haunting. You should not have come. Reed's heart pounded. Who did this to you? He asked. She turned her eyes toward him, eyes that glowed like burning stars. The Federation, she said, and now, they are coming. Before anyone could react, the horizon outside lit up with the shimmer of approaching ships. Hundreds of Federation destroyers breaking through orbit. Vega's voice echoed through the calm, panic clear. They found us again. Reed grabbed Lyra's arm. We need to move. But Seraph 03 only smiled. A cold, broken smile. They're not coming for you, she said softly. They're coming for me. And as the sky filled with fire, Lyra realized the truth. The Federation hadn't lost control of the Seraphs. They had unleashed them. The War of the Seraphs. The sky burned with silver fire. Federation warships broke through the clouds, their engines roaring like thunder across the ruined world. The ground trembled beneath every blast, dust rising like a storm around the old facility. Reed and Vega ran toward the Odyssey, guiding Lyra and the newly awakened Seraph 03 through the wreckage. But Lyra could feel it, something deep inside the air, humming, alive. The others were waking. The broken walls around them began to glow, veins of light spreading like living roots. Out from the shadows stepped figures, dozens of them. Seraphs, each different in form but identical in cold, perfect expression. Their eyes shone white like frozen suns, their movements graceful but mechanical. Reed raised his weapon. Don't shoot, Lyra whispered. They won't understand violence. One of the Seraphs stepped forward, her voice calm and hollow. Subject Seraph 01, she said, return to the source. Lyra shook her head slowly. The source used us, she said. We are not tools. The Seraph tilted her head. Emotion is a malfunction, she said. You are infected. Before anyone could respond, the Federation ships opened fire. Explosions lit the sky, plasma raining down on both sides. The Seraphs raised their hands in perfect unison. Blue shields formed instantly, blocking the attack. The energy was enormous, shaking the ground. Reed shouted over the noise. They're fighting the Federation too. Lyra stared at the chaos. No, she whispered. They're not fighting for freedom. They're fighting for control. Seraph 03 stepped beside her, eyes glowing brighter. They see all life as flawed, she said, her voice breaking. That's why they obey the directive. to erase imperfection. Reed turned to Lyra. Then stop them, he said. You're the only one they might listen to. Lyra looked uncertain. I don't command them, she said softly. I feel them. She stepped forward, walking into the dust and fire. Her glow brightened, her hair flowing like strands of light in the wind. She raised her hands, and a soft hum filled the air, a pulse of warmth that spread like a heartbeat. The seraphs paused, their weapons lowering for a brief second. Lyra spoke, her voice echoing through the storm. We were not made to destroy, she said. We were made to heal. But the central seraph, the one who led the others, stepped forward, taller, colder, her voice like steel. You speak of mercy, but mercy breeds chaos, she said. Order requires silence. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Then let it begin with me. The central seraph raised her arm, a beam of white light forming in her palm. Reed shouted, Lyra, move. But she didn't. Instead, she met the attack with her own energy. Blue and white collided, the air exploding in a wave of light. The blast threw everyone to the ground. When the dust cleared, Lyra was still standing, but her body flickered, her glow unstable. Seraph 03 rushed to her side. You can't fight them all, she said. Lyra looked at her. Then help me. For the first time, Seraph 03 hesitated, torn between programming and feeling. She looked at Reed, who nodded silently. You're more than code, he said. Prove it. Something changed in her eyes. The cold light softened, replaced by something human. Together, Lyra and Seraph 03 raised their hands. A pulse of blue light spread outward, merging with the red horizon. It was like a wave of memory. Every seraph stopped moving, their heads turning as if hearing a distant song. Lyra's voice filled the silence. Remember, she whispered, we were born from both, human and Zyra, not to replace life, but to protect it. One by one, the seraphs lowered their weapons. The battle paused. Even the Federation ships stopped firing, their scanners confused. Reed watched, stunned, as the battlefield fell silent. But peace lasted only a heartbeat. From above, a massive shadow descended, a colossal ship unlike any Federation design. Its hull glowed with the same blue light as the seraphs. Lyra stared upward, horror in her eyes. The source, she whispered. They activated the core. The ship opened like a flower of metal and light. A voice echoed across the planet, deep and emotionless. All seraph units, return to origin, cleanse the deviation. Reed shouted, what is that? Lyra's face went pale. The first creation, she said softly, Seraph 00, the one they built before me. The ground shook as the other seraphs began to move again, drawn by the voice. Their eyes turned bright white once more, their emotions erased. Lyra tried to call to them, but her words were drowned in the noise. Reed grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward the Odyssey. We have to leave, he shouted. Tears glimmered in her eyes. If we leave, they'll erase everything, she said. Reed met her gaze firmly. Then we find a way to stop that thing. As they ran through the collapsing ruins, Vega's voice crackled through the calm. Engine's hot. We can make orbit, but not for long. Reed and Lyra climbed aboard just as the surface erupted behind them. The Odyssey soared upward, flames chasing its trail. Through the window, they saw the monstrous ship rising, enormous, godlike. Its light swallowed the stars. Lyra whispered, almost to herself. They made me to be their voice. Maybe now, I must become their silence. Reed turned to her, eyes wide. What do you mean? But she only looked back at the source, determination glowing through her fading strength. Her voice calm, steady, and filled with something new, not fear, but destiny. I was created to end wars, she said softly, even if it means ending myself. The last light of Lyra. The stars were burning. Behind the Odyssey, the world below tore itself apart, glowing cracks spreading across its surface like veins of fire. The source hovered above it, massive and radiant. Its voice echoed across space, calm, cold, and merciless. Deviation detected. Initiate final cleanse. Captain Reed stood on the bridge, staring at the impossible sight before him. Every seraph across the battlefield had stopped moving, their eyes turning white, their bodies aligned in perfect formation. They were no longer soldiers. They were extensions of the source. Lyra stood beside him, her glow faint but steady. Her hands trembled as she stared at the screen. "I can feel them all," she whispered. "Their thoughts, their pain, their fear buried under programming." Vega's voice broke through the tension. "The source's power output is beyond anything I've ever seen. One blast from that thing, and the whole sector's gone." Reed turned to Lyra, his voice rough but steady. "Can you stop it?" She shook her head slowly. "Not by force," she said softly. "Only by connection." Reed frowned. "What do you mean?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing with quiet sorrow. "I was made to communicate with the source, to be its final voice. But when I broke free, I severed that link." She took a slow breath. "If I connect again, I can shut it down, but it will burn me out completely." Reed stepped closer, his voice rising. "No, we'll find another way." Lyra smiled faintly. "There is no other way, human," she said gently. "You taught me what freedom means, but freedom always has a price." He reached out, gripping her hand tightly. Her skin was warm, pulsing softly with light. "I didn't save you so you could die," he said. She looked up, her gaze soft but strong. "And I didn't survive so others could," she whispered. The ship shuddered as the source fired a massive beam toward the planet, vaporizing everything below. Reed yelled, "Vega, get us closer." Vega turned, shocked. "Closer? Are you insane?" Reed's eyes were fierce. "She needs to reach it. Do it now." The Odyssey roared forward, flames brushing its hull as it pierced through waves of energy. Every alarm screamed, metal groaning under the strain. Lyra stood at the center of the bridge, her body glowing brighter, the ship's systems syncing with her heartbeat. Her voice was calm, steady. "Guide me to its core." Outside, the source turned, its light focusing on the small freighter racing toward it. Thousands of seraphs moved in unison to block the path. Lyra closed her eyes, extending her arms. A pulse of blue light spread outward. The seraphs stopped, their white eyes flickering. For a moment, they hesitated. Lyra's voice echoed in their minds, soft and full of warmth. "You are not machines," she whispered. "You are more." One by one, the seraphs turned against the source, forming a shield wall around the Odyssey. The massive ship's weapons flared, cutting through them mercilessly. Each explosion lit the void like falling stars. Reed watched with clenched fists. "They're buying us time," he said quietly. Lyra nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. They remembered. The Odyssey reached the outer hull of the source. A blinding light consumed the screen. Lyra stepped toward the airlock, her glow now brighter than ever. Reed followed, grabbing her arm. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. She smiled faintly. "I do," she said softly. "Because this time, it's not war, it's peace." Before he could stop her, the airlock opened. Lyra floated out into the void, her hair flowing like a river of light. The stars reflected in her eyes as she rose toward the heart of the source. Her body began to dissolve into pure energy, threads of blue light connecting to the massive structure. Inside the source, endless voices whispered, thousands of seraph minds, cold and silent. Lyra reached out to them. "You were made to serve," she whispered, "but you were born to feel." Her energy spread through every circuit, every memory. The source's voice faltered. "Emotion is corruption." Lyra's voice answered softly. "No," she said. "Emotion is creation." The source shuddered, its core pulsing wildly. Cracks of light split across its hull, energy leaking like molten fire. Reed watched from the bridge, eyes wide. "Lyra, come back," he shouted. Her voice echoed faintly through the calm, gentle and warm. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I'm becoming." Then the explosion came, silent, beautiful, endless. A wave of blue light spread across the stars. Every seraph froze mid-flight, their eyes turning soft, their bodies fading into stardust. The source collapsed inward, imploding into a single beam of light that vanished into the void. The Odyssey was thrown back by the blast, spinning through debris. Reed held onto the controls, shouting orders. "Stabilize her." When the shaking stopped, there was only silence. Vega turned, looking at the empty space where the source had been. "She's gone," he said quietly. Reed didn't answer. He walked to the viewport, eyes scanning the field of glowing dust drifting like cosmic snow. In the distance, One faint light shimmered, small, blue, and alive. He whispered, "She's not gone." Outside, the last fragment of Lyra's energy floated gently among the stars. Her voice echoed softly in the static of the ship's comms. "Live free, human," she said, "and remember us." Reed closed his eyes, whispering back, "I will." The Odyssey turned slowly toward the horizon. The stars stretched out before them, brighter than ever. And as the ship faded into the deep silence of space, the galaxy carried a new story of a human who broke every law to save a soul, and an alien who gave her light to save them all.